Hi, friends. I understand that people who do photography and people who are interested in art and art history, uh, they're usually the kind of people who like to take trips and travel. Um, I've had the good fortune of spending a couple of years in Europe quite a while back, but I've made a few trips. Um, let's just say that there are many more places that I would like to visit. This is particularly about a trip that we took in October of 2019. The big city was Oslo, and the countryside was a island above the Arctic Circle called Senja, and we were particularly interested in that to get pictures of the Aurora Borealis. But if you have a few days in Oslo, wonderful place. Public transportation, like many European cities, is flawless. You buy a 3-day pass and you have access to buses, trolley cars, and even water taxis. So all of this is pre-COVID. Uh, it was off season, so we weren't in the middle of summer, and it was kind of nice because things were still open, but they weren't packed. Um, we found a rental, a little hotel that had been redone. And I think we were in Oslo for 3 days. Quite affordable and very comfortable accommodations. Um, it's a colorful old town. Uh, just kind of street scenes. This was waiting for trams and parks all over the place. Wonderful parks. Um, and beautiful old buildings all around. Um, it's an art city of a sculptor who um, worked with the city and decided that they could swap land for a sculpture garden. And I think there are probably hundreds of sculptures all over the city, but this was one park that had lots of them. When you worked your way downtown, you ended up by the harbor, and like many big cities, there's a downtown, and if you're in Toronto or any other waterfront city, there's going to be some settlements around the harbor, so you might want to take a harbor cruise. This one was on, and sorry about the blur here. This was on an old sailing ship that they had installed a, a motor in it, and they were taking us around. It was freezing, very cold, but colorful. In the midst of summer, these are all bathing houses. The real houses are up above, and these are just for people to come down and change into their swim gear and climb down the ladders and chit chat with each other and loll around in the beautiful waters. This is a water taxi. Uh, Same ticket that you used. Ride the trains or ride the trams or take a bus. You can also jump on one of these and take a shortcut across a corner of the bay. So my art history students have been reading about the Vikings, and this is just one of a few different Scandinavian museums that celebrate the Viking. I believe in Sweden there are some, and I think in Denmark there are some as well. This is um, a burial ship that had been excavated and put back on display. And they had a beautiful animated "You Are There" kind of wraparound presentation that took you on a Viking voyage across the seas. Very interesting projection, and you kind of felt like you were surrounded by these dragon boats. Many pieces of artwork were on display. This was a cart, and you can notice the elaborate Viking woodworking skills and interconnectedness of all of the designs. This is another kind of famous dragon head that's been carved very, very carefully. And right down the road from the Viking Museum was the Kon-Tiki Museum. I told a few of my art history students about an experiment that was done where they built a ocean-going reed vessel in North Africa, and they studied the winds. Now, this was only about 50 years ago, and they studied the winds, and they took a voyage from North Africa to Central America. This was, you can look this up, it was called the Ra, and they had to construct a second one. The first one made it almost all the way, but took on water. And this one, or the second one, made the journey. So there was just a kind of a interest in the community about whether it's possible that some of these settlers, some of the people who ended up in the Middle Americas may have come by sea. A lot of anthropologists don't subscribe to that, but Thor decided that he was going to put this to the test, and he was able to do it. This is just another harbor front shot. And if you want to get to the airport from downtown Oslo, you get on one of these bullet trains and you go shooting out across the countryside, go under the city for a few miles. They have a tunnel. And then you go above ground for several more miles until you get to the airport. We were heading north, and this is above the Arctic Circle. Lots of snow cap. It wasn't totally under snow, so we got to experience a little bit of late fall and early winter. And when we landed, we took a bus through this little town called Finnsnes, and you'll notice there's a bridge. On the other side of the bridge is the island of Senja, second biggest island in Norway, and it's a summertime tourist place. As we were visiting, of course, there weren't very many sunbathers out. As far as I could see, people living way up north, they had the same kind of shopping centers, the same kinds of facilities. I saw an indoor soccer stadium that people further south have. And this is a ferry boat, and it has a very regular run that goes along these passages and stops at one major city to another. If you went to college and you lived in Finnsnes, you would get on this type of a boat, and a half an hour later you would get off in the next city where they had the university. So you'd commute by ferry boat. And this is taken from the top of that bridge that I showed you, and the boat has now moved on. This was our Aurora Borealis observatory, and a beautiful, it used to be a farm, but it's now being converted for, I guess you would call it ecotourism, and they're specializing in their winter hosting people. The weather is fairly clear in this part of Norway, so your chances of seeing the northern lights are better than in other places around. Um, that is a view from our window, and it looked out over the pasture land that was being cleared back towards Finnsnes. Like I said, early winter, late fall, and so ice every morning, ice was every place and made for beautiful pictures. Even the first night, we were blessed with seeing some Aurora Borealis, and the camera actually sees the Aurora Borealis better than the human eye, but I tried not to do too much retouching on these. Sometimes you'll see very, very over saturated pictures of the Aurora Borealis. It's sometimes it's kind of hard to see. It just kind of looks like a little bit of a gray cloud. And then other nights it gets quite bold. And our first our first evening we just saw some of it, but we were very happy. Um, During the day we would take a tour of the island, and they had a little tour bus and stopped along the way. There's definitely fishing going on, and people still have their farms going. And then we got to the other side of the island, which faces the Atlantic or the Baltic, and it's super steep mountains, jagged mountains, and deep fjords. And this is one of the fjords. Uh, Quite a ride. Uh, pretty ice glazing on some of the uh, weeds and trees that are wintering over. These are called the Devil's Teeth, and they're made out of a volcanic tufa. They're not good climbing, so don't get out your rock gear. But in the summertime, there are trails that go up the backside of some of these. And like I said, it's a popular European tour destination. This is another viewing point of one of the fjords. It's like a great big huge diving board that juts out over the edge of the mountainside. And that little village way across in the background, that little village was where we stopped to have a bite to eat. And Oh, there it is. Fish chowder and homemade bread, salmon. Uh, these are the types of things that are really fresh and very, very yummy. Of course, dessert's very yummy too. And then back for evening sky viewing, and Aurora Borealis didn't let us down. And second and third nights, we were there for 5 nights in all, and every night we saw some uh, sky phenomena, and we were very, very happy that things kind of kicked up and started to get even uh, bolder. You can see that we had to dress in a snowsuit, a very thick padded snowsuit, because the best lights were happening at about 2 a.m. in the morning. And so you would be layered up in all sorts of clothes, and then you'd pull on your snowsuit. I had to worry about my camera freezing. Battery life goes short. And if you ever take a cold camera back in your house, you'll get all sorts of condensation, and it'll take about a day or two to dry out. So I just had to leave my camera outside on the porch in case we got another notice. They had a little messaging system, and if somebody saw action in the sky, you got a little buzz, and that was meet me on the hill up front, and we'll take a look and see what kind of lights we see. All of these are in kind of constant motion. They grow and morph, and sometimes you'll even see a little bit of color besides the green. Sometimes there's some pinky tones that are coming in. They have different names for different uh, types. Some of them are like rainbows that kind of come across, and other ones have the uh, crown effect, and then it's almost like rain in the desert. Once you see them form, all of a sudden they start to kind of have a cosmic rain that starts to fall down. And when you're underneath that sort of a sky, it's just breathtaking. So that is pretty much what our trip was all about.